Well, what a cute little farmhouse here, Jeff. Is this what brings us to Conway, New Hampshire today?
The house is the reason we're here, Ray. It's the Russell-Colbath house, located right off the Kancamagus Highway.
So, is it cursed? Haunted? What are we here for?
Well, it's haunted in a way. This is the house and story of Ruth Colbath, a woman who waited. Hey, I'm Jeff Belanger.
And I'm Ray Auger, and welcome to episode 47 of the New England Legends podcast. If you give us about 10 minutes, we'll give you something strange to talk about today. So we're on a mission to chronicle every legend in New England, 1 week and one story at a time.
And you can help us out by joining our super secret Facebook group, contributing to the discussion, commenting on our website at ournewenglandlegends.com, or calling or texting us on our legend line at 617-444-9683. We appreciate hearing from you. And we'll get to some of your texts at the end of this episode. And don't forget to check out the New England Legends television series. You can watch it right now on Amazon Prime and PBS.
All right, so this house, Jeff, what exactly was Ruth Colbath waiting for?
It's not so much what as who.
Well, I think we should set it up.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
All right, this simple 1.5-story farmhouse was built in the early 1830s by Thomas Russell and his son, Amzi.
Right.
They owned 8,700 acres of prime timberland, which is how they figured they'd make their fortune.
That's a lot of land.
Eventually, Amzi marries a woman named Eliza, and they moved into the farmhouse where they raised 5 daughters. So that's where we get the Russell portion of the Russell-Colbath house.
In 1877, Amzi Russell dies, leaving a mortgage and unpaid taxes on all of that land. Most of it was sold to pay his debts, but the farmhouse and its 100-acre lot, that stayed in the family. 10 years later, Amzi's widow, Eliza Russell, deeds the property over to her daughter, Ruth Priscilla, and her husband, Thomas Alden Colbath. But there's a catch.
There's always a catch, Jeff.
Yeah, Tom and Ruth got a free house, but mom/mother-in-law Eliza was going to live with them.
Well, that's a tough break for free housing.
Yeah, there's always a price. So Thomas and Ruth work their humble little farm and live a simple life here in the White Mountains of New Hampshire.
In 1890, Ruth becomes the first postmistress of the new Passaconaway post office, and life seems good.
It's a simple life, but good by most New England standards. But then something happens.
Some tragedy, some terrible landslide, just like what happened to the Willie family in episode 40?
Well, nothing that extreme. What happens is Thomas Colbath, he gets restless.
Okay. Well, what do you mean by restless?
In 1891, Thomas is now 41 years old, and he starts wondering, is this all there is to life?
Yeah, the midlife crisis. I get that.
Right? So that's pretty much what happens. So one day in late September of 1891, Thomas finishes his daily farm chores and then walks back in the house. He grabs a few items, tells his wife he's going out to run a few errands, and says,
"I'll be back in a little while."
Ruth smiles and nods and goes about her afternoon.
As the sun sets, there's no sign of her husband, so Ruth moves Thomas's dinner to the back of the stove to keep it warm, then places a lantern in the window so he can find his way home as night falls.
More time passes, and Ruth is starting to worry. This isn't like him. Did he get lost? Is he hurt? Where could he be?
What Ruth doesn't know or understand is that once Thomas started walking away from his little farmhouse in Conway, New Hampshire, well, he didn't stop.
But Ruth back home, she waited. And waited.
And waited.
The next day, friends searched the road to Conway. They worried maybe he was mauled by a bear or suffered a heart attack, but there was no sign of any injured person, and those shopkeepers in Conway, they claimed they hadn't seen Thomas. So pretty quickly, people figured Colbath had walked out on his wife.
But that's not what Ruth believed. So each night she set a lamp in the window in hopes he'd find his way home. And she waited more. Autumn turned to winter, which turned to spring of 1892, and still there was no sign of her husband.
Meanwhile, Thomas was off to see the world. He made his way down to Cuba, then over to Panama, where he worked for a while digging the Panama Canal. He moved to the western United States, where he worked on the railroad. He kept moving, always traveling.
And back home in Carroll County, New Hampshire, Ruth kept waiting.
So now months are melting into years, with no sign and no word from Thomas. Ruth still worked as the postmistress in town, and that kept her at the center of all the town gossip. People asked how she was doing, and she smiled. Yet still, she lit that lantern every night for Thomas.
Wow. In 1905, Ruth's mother, Eliza Russell, passed away, leaving Ruth truly alone in this little farmhouse.
Here's the thing, Ray. Ruth could have had Thomas declared dead.
Sure.
The estate could have been put in her name only,
Yep.
and she could have remarried. But she didn't.
Everyone in the region knew of Ruth's story. Most knew by this point that Thomas was either dead or
Right.
started a new life somewhere else.
Right.
Ruth's sister, who lived in Portsmouth, New Hampshire, begged her to come live with her, but she wouldn't leave her farmhouse and her life.
And meanwhile, Thomas was globetrotting and forgetting all about Ruth in New Hampshire, though not entirely.
Well, years now melted into decades, and still Ruth was getting older. Taking care of a farm by herself isn't easy, and she still lights the lamp each night and sets it in the
Wow.
window. Yeah, for 39 years,
Oh, my gosh.
Ruth Colbath goes through this ritual.
But by 1930, Ruth's health is failing her. Finally, her family friend Ben Swinton takes Ruth from her home against her wishes and brings her to a nearby hospital in North Conway, where she passes away. Ruth didn't have much besides this house and land, which passed on to her relatives.
I mean, this is a sad story.
Yeah.
Ruth wasted 39 years of her life waiting for a man who walked out on her and didn't even have the guts to tell her he was leaving.
Well, maybe. Or maybe she liked living alone. She chose not to have Thomas declared dead. And she lived a life free from a lot of societal constraints of having to be a wife, care for her husband, things like that. But the strangest part of this story is that Ruth's death isn't the end.
Oh, what do you mean?
3 years after Ruth died, in September of 1933, an old man arrives in Carroll County. A stranger, though somehow slightly familiar.
No way.
Yeah.
You don't mean...
I do. Thomas Alden Colbath,
Wow.
now 83 years old, finally came home. Since he left his wife and their little farmhouse 39 years earlier, the airplane had been invented. Electricity was harnessed and became widely available in homes. Radio station broadcasts reached almost every house, and even the television came along.
I don't believe it. What did you think he'd find?
I don't know, but he did find his old friend Ben Swinton, who filled him in on what became of his wife, how she lit a lamp for him every night he was gone until she died. His story even made it to the front page of many newspapers, including the September 30, 1933 Portsmouth Herald.
Even the headline is sad. Check it out. It reads, "Learns of long devotion of his wife. Burned lamp 39 years for New Hampshire man."
Ray, if you ducked out of your house like that, how long do you think your wife would wait for you?
Maybe till dinner.
Till
I don't-
dinner?
Yeah, maybe. How about you, Jeff? How long would your wife wait?
Yeah, I'm thinking 1-2 hours tops and should change the locks.
Did Thomas ever explain why he left? What he did with himself all those years? Or why he came back?
Well, he enjoyed the attention he was getting from the press, and he told stories of working on the Panama Canal, laying railroad tracks. But as for why he left, our only clue came in a letter that Thomas's mother wrote to Ruth shortly after he disappeared. The letter explains how Thomas ran away when he was 16 years old and went to sea. Then he worked for a logging company, which is how he eventually made his way back to New Hampshire.
Well, it sounds like Thomas Colbath had a solid case of lifelong wanderlust.
I agree.
What did he expect to find when he came home? What do you think?
Well, I'm not sure, but with no place else to go, Thomas sought out Ruth's relatives to see if he could live out his days in the old farmhouse. It would seem that Thomas Colbath came home to die.
I guess Ruth, wherever she was, could finally stop waiting.
The Russell-Colbath house is available for touring if you'd like to come to Conway, New Hampshire and stare out the same window that Ruth Colbath did all those years ago. We posted a link to them on our website at OurNewEnglandLegends.com. Just click on episode 47.
Hey, Jeff, we got a few texts to the legend line this week.
Excellent.
Yep, 617-444-9683. We got this one from the 270 area code. That's Kentucky.
Right,
Pretty
okay.
cool. It asks, is this a legend line? Yes, it is, Kentucky. Thank you.
I like it when the questions are easy, so thank you for that. We got this comment from the 510 area code. That's Oakland, California.
Wow.
It reads, Jeff and Ray, happy 4th of July from California. My kids and I love your podcast. From Kevin, Christopher, and Olivia.
Well, thanks, guys.
Thank you.
We also got this question from the 203 area code. That's Connecticut, close by.
Yep.
It reads, that's in New England, right?
Yeah, Connecticut's
good.
New England.
I always forget about Connecticut and New England.
The gateway to New England.
That's
is
true.
One of its nicknames.
It reads, hey guys, when are you going to come to the Nutmeg State and talk about Dudleytown, our most famous ghost town?
Man, that's a long story. Dudleytown was probably the first story I ever covered back in the mid-1990s, working on a documentary film. It's a really interesting story of this really ghost village that made it in the woods up there in Cornwall, Connecticut for about 100 years. And there's talk of curses and all kinds of strange things.
Of course.
Maybe we'll have to get to that one day. But
maybe we should go to it.
We should. Well, that's trespassing now. It's private land.
We'd like to thank Dustin Perry for lending his voice acting talents this week, Kathy Somerville, a docent at the Russell-Colbath House, for her research help, and our theme music is by John Judd, of course.
Until next time, remember, the bizarre is closer than you think.